hope you're enjoying my dad's videos. Make sure to share this video with family and friends, like and subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you get notified for all my dad's new videos. My social media will be tagged down below so you can follow it. And just remember, Jesus loves you.
Well, let me introduce you then.
Yeah, excellent.
Hi, guys. Sorry.
Go on, please.
Hi, guys. Welcome. And today I've got Albert Lopez from Florida with me. Welcome, Albert.
Charlie, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to see you.
Pleasure is mine. I wanted to first premise what I'm going to share with your audience today with the fact that I'm going to probably break some preconceptions they may have. I may break their hearts. I may bend their minds. And everything I say comes from the heart.
Yep.
Nothing is meant to hurt anybody, offend anybody.
Sure.
I describe it in the following fashion. I lay out a buffet, and everybody takes what they wish.
Yep.
Not everything in the buffet is for everybody. Some things are too spicy, some things are not. And I ask people to look within themselves to see what resonates with them. And that, of course, is because I believe that we are, the best way to describe humanity is that we are abused orphans. We don't know our past. We don't know our present. We think we know, but we only know what has been told to us. And we live within a prison planet. In other words, everything around us, every system, every aspect of our reality has been shaped to keep us within. So first, my life, I was born in Mexico. I grew up in Mexico. I studied architecture. Then I came to the United States. Before that, I moved out of my house when I was 14 to go to high school. When I look back at my life, I'm now 52 going on 53. And when I looked back at my life, I realized that my life had been built up of discrete blocks. These blocks were unique and different. What it meant is that I had to be almost a different person through each one of those blocks. And I'm sure you can relate because I see your life experience and I can see that you've had a lot of different experiences. The kind of thing that most people would pack into several lifetimes, you packed into one. Yeah. It's kind of a similar thing with me. So I almost had to be a different person in each one of them. And when there was a transition from one to the next, it was a very solid, very hard transition. Like the time when I moved to England, definitely different than the previous one. That defined a change. And of course, 2012 was another big change for me. When I came to the US, I realized that in order to validate my degree, I had to study more. So I decided to go into business. And of course, life changed at that moment. So it took me a long time to get through school. I went to many different schools to do it. In the end, I ended up with not only the 2 degrees, one for business, one for architecture, but also 2 postgraduates. The latest one being at an executive program at MIT. I say these things because people want to gain context about who am I. I had a childhood dream of inventing. One of those times when you sit there as a child and you say, hey, I like to invent something. Of course, I didn't invent anything at the time. I didn't have the knowledge or the information needed, but I eventually became an inventor. I have multiple patents. I like to write. Most of the time I wrote for trade publications, so about economics, sales, trainings, or motivation. And the pinnacle of my writing came when I had an op-ed published by the Wall Street Journal. I had a very creative side in my lifetime. I had an executive side in my lifetime. And of course, now I'm again post 2012. I had an urgency to learn quantum physics. Now, before that, I had done product development using what I describe as the material sciences, Ohm's laws, Newtonian physics, the sciences from 200 years ago. When you see an expert on TV, that's what they use. You know, they come in as experts, they say everything has to be measurable and everything has to be, well, if it wasn't for the urgency to learn quantum physics, I would have never been where I am today. And the reason is, before that, like you, I don't know if it's necessarily identical, but I had a hard time with religion. I had a very hard time thinking of a God who would punish. I had a hard time with the idea of sin. And just the organized religion was difficult for me. I grew up as a Catholic. You know, my wife's a Catholic. You can probably see the cross up there on the wall. And but now, after learning quantum physics soundly, I was able to understand everything, because it brought in God with science and explained science in a much better way than anything before. So it helped me understand. Because I had been doing some meditation. I don't know if you meditate, but I did it for stress originally. Then, of course, it opened the gate. At some point after 2012, I began to get what people would describe as downloads. These downloads were information, and at first I was getting information on things that I was somewhat familiar with. I just never thought about. I just thought they were new ideas. I began to write, okay? Then after that, I've got information on things I had not considered that were much more advanced than I would have been qualified for. So I decided to go and research to see if what I was getting was accurate. Things on how cancer happens, how Alzheimer's happens, and things like that. I ended up researching thousands of scientific documents. I ended up researching a lot, hundreds of patents. And what I found is that what I was getting downloads for was accurate. So it helped me build trust, all for the next stage, which is when I began to get information that was not in any scientific document, such as where we hold memory. Most scientists will tell you that our limbic system, our emotional side, is what defines what we choose for long-term memory, but that just makes no sense, because the better decision maker in our brain is our neocortex. And what makes us, the outside part that is all, wrinkled, that makes us think that we're really smart. Well, the limbic system is actually literally connecting with our past. You know, when you look at it from a quantum physical perspective, we actually are time travelers every day, and we don't hold memories. We just hold the code. We only hold the code, and if we don't remember the code, then when we see an event and it triggered, for example, we may see a friend from when we lived in some place in the past, those two combined will create a code, a frequency of sorts, and that will make us remember, even though we didn't have memory before. But it doesn't make sense from the universe's perspective that we would hold memory in our brain, because if you think about it, a baby comes in and it already has a large head, very close to what we have. But so the head doesn't change a lot, but the information changes a lot, okay? And so what makes more sense is that the universe would hold the information and we're just accessing it. So things like that, I don't want to scare people. That's not how the rest of the presentation will be. It'll be a lot easier, but it just gives you an idea of the kind of depth and the kind of detail that I was getting. I started writing a book, and I wrote about 140,000 words. I mean, a massive amount of information. And in meditation, I asked if I was to publish it or it was just to organize my thoughts. And I was told that by my higher self that it was just to organize my thoughts. So needless to say, a lot of what I bring, what I'm going to mention, you have to understand that I would ask a question and I would get an answer. So just like you, that you research and you then discern what is correct and what is wrong, what resonates with you as a truth and what doesn't. A lot of what I have, of course, is a compilation of that and the insight that I got through meditation. Okay, so this is just to put context to what I wanted to share. And the first thing that I noticed is that everything around us in our system was compartmentalized. You are an expert on global currencies. I mean, there's no doubt. Then there's the people like Simon Parkes who, as a politician, told the voters that he was part mantis, part reptilian, and brings in the spiritual side. Then you have someone like on the secret space program like Corey Good. Then you have Q for the politics. And of course, most people are aware of Q, but that's somehow compartmentalized. He doesn't. They have not made they've not come to the conclusion that actually joins with everything else. Now, some of your speakers do, and you do. You realize there's a convergence taking place where multiple information from multiple places is all coming together because it's all tied at the core. There's secret societies. There's someone like Sean Cross who's a runaway right now because they, when he spoke the truth, they arrested him, they put him in jail, and I believe he's somewhere around Spain or France. So from there, what I ask the audience is to completely open their minds up, to understand that the paradigm that we've had has changed. It's different than the reality that there is out there. Now, again, that's why there's a truth movement like you. That's why you have so many speakers that come in and deal with truth at different levels. When William Tompkins, when he described that when the U.S. Navy was spying on the Germans on their secret space program, that the Navy decided that they could not have somebody who was a graduate from Annapolis to drive it, to manage it, because they knew too much. And they realized that all the books they had read and all the schooling they had done actually became an impediment. So they chose somebody who had not even finished high school, because you almost need that naive look into what we're experiencing in order for people to wholly understand. They have to put what they know aside and hold it, which of course is going to be most difficult for people who are academics, who spend more time on the books and on the system. A lot of your audience asks, how far back? And if I'll try to narrate all this, and I understand that it will be jam-packed, but it's because I wanted to paint a holistic picture, okay? So I'm not just trying to put people to sleep. The people ask, how far back does this go? How far back does a cabal go, or the swamp go? Do they go back to George Bush when he took power, Papa Bush? Because he was a CIA guy? Do they go back to the time when the Federal Reserve started and the IRS and doing unconstitutional, taking unconstitutional liberties on the American public? Or does he go further back? And my premise is that he goes back way before Jesus Christ. He goes back to the Sumerian times. Back then in Sumeria, they had banking. They had, well, in fact, what we have now, one of your speakers recently, I think a couple of days ago, described that we have a Babylonian money system.
Correct.
So they had the banking, they had the education, they had the political structure. Pretty much, they describe us as going from the Stone Age, scraping rocks to create fire, to suddenly we have the cities with all these systems that are very similar to what we have today. Maybe not as large cities, but the system was very much similar. The Bible actually tells us the truth. The Bible is a historical document. We just have to read it with discernment, because nothing is exactly accurate. They tell us that the sons of gods had children with the daughters of men, and that is the cabal. That is the family lineage. Those are the ones who were left here to make sure that our productivity was collected and that we were guided into always being submissive, under control. When we look at the Bible, for example, there's a lot of people who are experts on the Bible, and they will quote this part or that part, but they don't look at it as a whole. They're looking at the parts, and we could sit there and argue every word if they want to, but I decided to look at the Bible from a different perspective. Every word has energy. Every word has a meaning. So I did a search for how many times the word love appears in the Bible. We would think the Bible is a document of love, right? Then I compared it to how many times the word sin appears. We know that the more loving words there is, and it doesn't have to be love, it could be lover, loving. The more loving words there is, the more loving the document would be. Well, interestingly, the word love appears 686 times, and the word sin appears 1,364, so almost 2 to 1. So that to me should give people pause to understand that even something as holy as the Bible has been tweaked and modified over time into creating the energy or the emotion, the control system, fear, anger, fear, shame are the lowest energy states that we can be in. So the control system, of course, tries to promote those things. When we look at the history, and I'm building up through the history so people can see how at every stage that what they're seeing today wasn't just created. It's actually part of one big complex system. For example, we're supposed to be the Western civilization, and when you go back to our history, they say, well, the Greeks influenced us. And the Greeks, of course, were all about logic. Well, that's the divine masculine. What is so obvious, and this is addressing to what you were describing with the left brain, with the right brain, the logical versus the emotional side, is that the divine feminine, they knew was a risk for them. They had to remove it. And the reason why is because the divine feminine is about love, creation, and intuition. And intuition tells you when someone's lying to you without you don't need to have evidence. Logic requires evidence. The intuition doesn't. And if you know when someone's lying to you, if you can connect with the rest of your community and all know that someone's lying to you, that becomes a problem. So what they said is that they say that the only way to truth was logic. That's what the Greeks said. So you have someone like Plato, for example. He writes about logic or law, and the scholars take him like God. This is gospel. But when he talks about Atlantis, for example, they say, oh, he was writing children's books. So the history, and we can see how they change things right in front of us. The history has been adjusted even from that far back. The modern feminist movement, and your previous speaker was just addressing the feminist side. The modern feminist movement is not about love and creation. She says she wished to be able to have a family. That's creation. Instead of that, what they created was a super masculine woman, which was a woman that could wrestle, and because logic and conflict, that's the divine masculine. Someone who could do logic better than men, someone who could do wrestling better than men. That they destroy the divine feminine. They even took out of, you have Jesus Christ and you have Virgin Mary, and they were both magicians. They both did great things, but you remove the Virgin Mary and you focus on Jesus Christ. Why is this important? We have within us, we have what I describe as the big brain, which is intuition side. It's what connects us to the universe. If you look at an ant, their brain, in other words, equivalent to our human brain, right? And it's very small. It's very useless compared to ours. But when they interact together, when they intuit together, when they connect together, ants become engineers. That's the brain we're missing. If we were able to use our intuitive side, the divine feminine, we would be able to connect to the universe. In essence, what I was doing when I was getting all this information downloads, so I was using my divine feminine, which we all have it. Our souls have both. It's just that we have been robbed out of one. And we move forward on history. And as you know, King John in the 13th century created the Magna Carta, which is a creation of business. Why? Because what happened is that you had a king, the first male, but the rest of the family didn't get the power. They didn't get the money. They didn't get all the spoils. So they all wanted to be able to participate. So they needed instruments in order to be able to gain wealth, because the king could just tax people and just do whatever he wanted. So that introduces a concept of the fact that there is a family beyond just the king. And if we go then to what was called the New World. Now we're dealing with the New World Order, but the New World was America. The New World was America, and what happened was the royal families, not the king, but the brothers, the sisters, the cousins, they were tired of not being able to have power, so they all decided they all wanted to be kings for 4 years. They wanted to split the king's throne, and that, of course, meant that now that we had a precedent. They argued about how could they choose among them because they didn't trust each other. They argued in how they could choose who would be king next. And what they decided is they said, we'll tell the people to vote. We'll tell the people that instead of having a king, now they have a precedent. Instead of them serving the king, the president serves them as a public servant, and now they choose, but they're going to choose between us. Now, the problem was then that what if a president or a king decides to be king in perpetuity until death? And at that moment is when they felt that it was best to do the division of powers, which is now we divide the king's throne into judge king, lawmaker king, executive king. In this way, the one king couldn't just change the rules. They marked all this, they wrote all this down in a constitutional form, which was, in a way, their contract. I understand it's not a contract, but it's a contract between them. It was a way for them to protect each other. And what happened is that the republic came because they had too many family members. So they were able to now distribute the king throne in every little area as well as the whole republic. Well, these people, the ideal they promoted was a pluribus unum, which is out of many one, out of many family members, one king. It was never for us. It was never meant for us. Every one of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, they all became presidents except for Franklin. And if we look at the U.S. presidents, every single U.S. president in history up to Obama, they were all members of the same family. They're all descendants of King John. So then they went on and they decided, how can we do this? Not everybody's going to move to America. There's still too many family members. So how can we do this over here in Europe? They knew these were all insiders. These were all generals. These were all leaders within the country. And so they decided that the most lost one was the King of France. So it was easy just to create a blockade for the food, get people angry, just walk them into the palace. And in order to send a message to the rest of the kings, they had to be very graphic. Nothing better than taking the king and decapitating them in public. Imagine what the kings thought. So they created the French Revolution. And of course, their ideal was liberté, égalité, fraternité. Liberty from the king, equality, all of them together, fraternity working together. It was not for us. That's why those ideals have never fit us in modern society, but they fit them. And they told us the truth. Now, at some point around the 17th, the 18th century, they introduced the expert. And that's where we have the material sciences, which describe that everything has to be evidence-based, everything has to be measured. But the problem, we have to understand, love becomes a problem for the Greek culture. It becomes a problem for the material sciences because love is neither logical nor measurable, not from the way they measure with a measuring stick. Only quantum physics has the ability to measure love. So what we have to understand is that from the independence of Latin America to independence of the United States, in Latin America, those heroes that liberated us were royals. Jesuits are royals, Hidalgo, Morelos. And the same happened throughout. So we have the fact that these people have set up a system that literally wraps their arms around us and has adjusted over time. And it is within every book that we read. It is within every part of our culture. When it would be very difficult for anyone to understand, why would these people do this sort of stuff? And the problem is that we're humans and we project our humanity onto others. We say, how could someone be that bad? How can they hurt children? and what we have to understand is that humanity has a kaleidoscopical emotion. We're kaleidoscopicals in emotions. We have every flavor and emotion, every color. We go from angry to sad to happy to, you know, every aspect, every emotion possible is within us. That's what makes us beautiful. That's what makes humanity wonderful. This is why we have all of our galactic family is here. They look at us like we're babies. I mean, think of the fact that a baby it has very little control over their emotions. You know, that babies, they fight, but then I mean, the Japanese don't even interact with little children fight because they come to an agreement. So what it means, Charlie, is that I may hate you and I may do you wrong, but in 5 minutes I feel guilty and I carry it on my shoulders. And look at what a child does. Mommy, I hate you. And then later on they come in, Mommy, I'm sorry. And they cry. Because that's us. That's who we are. A criminal commits a crime, runs away from the law, and when they're caught, the first thing they tell the officer is, what took you so long? Because they were carrying that burden. These people are not like us. They're not human, and we're all humans, but we're all different types of humans. They're not like us. They're a completely different group. They're telling us that. They call themselves blue bloods. They are different, and this is why they watch who they mix with. This is why they watch who they have children with, because they, of course, their intent is to keep the lineage. These people, when they do wrong, they actually get happy. They don't carry a burden. It gives them energy. It's a completely different makeup.
Are these people reptilian?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. I'm terribly sorry. I said yes. They are half reptilian. Mm-hmm. And I was making the reference to the fact that we all have a portion in us that is also reptilian. Considering the fact that when we're first born, we have the reptilian shape when we are not first born, when we're first created as a fetus. Then we also have, of course, a part of the brain that scientists describe as a reptilian brain. But that is balanced with the angelical side. And this is why we have such kaleidoscopical emotions. Because we literally are we're constantly swinging from one emotion to the next. That makes us wonderful. And then, again, it makes us like children, our brothers and sisters in the galaxy. The angelical people that never interfere. They look at us and they look at us as children. Mm-hmm. You know, they love us. And I wanted to to get us an idea of how the Cabal thinks. Okay, I wanted to make reference to something that deals with the Nazis and the blacks, for example. The Nazis didn't choose white people as superior because they were superior necessarily in an intrinsic way. What made them more desirable for the Nazis was the fact that white people are easier to mind control. Black people are not easy to mind control. This is also why in American communities, they had to be pushed right to the edge of survival. This is, if you keep somebody right, I mean, the basic things we need is shelter, food, and love. And if you destroy the family, you know, just give them horrible housing, and you push them to just right at the edge of the food chain, or not, well, access to food, what you end up is making them more territorial, more aggressive. And that's because they're not easy to control. Think about it. When we think of Brazil, we think of a place of joy and happiness. Well, why don't we think of that when we think of Baltimore? Mm-hmm. You know, because it has been completely changed. And I mean, Brazil is the most black country in Latin America, and everybody in Latin America loves Brazil. Mm-hmm. You know, so in essence, the black community, their natural state is in joy and loving. They dance better than we do. They sing better than we do. They're always happy, and that is their natural state. And that makes them dangerous because they don't follow rules. Mm-hmm. You look at the Swedes, and they get in line. They follow the rules. They're told something, they do it. It doesn't make them good or better. It just means that it's better for the Cabal and for what they try to do. So what they tell us in history has been pretty much changed and described it, changed and modified, made fit their narrative of control. We think I describe that we are prisoners, that this is a prison planet. We think that we are free, but if you come to visit, you need a passport. Your country needs to issue the passport, and then to enter here, you have to ask for permission, and you have to register or do some sort of documentation. Even in the U.S., we think we can travel and move around as much as we want, but if I go to Texas, or person from Texas comes to Florida, they have to get a driver license within a few days. They can't, I mean, God forbid they drive around with a driver license from Texas. So we're not as free as we think we are. And what I described today, and I know I rushed through it because I wanted to be able to allow for a little more fluid conversation with you. I know you enjoy that a lot more than the dry information, but I also wanted to jam pack it for your audience. So we have had our intuition removed. That's our big brain. They took away our big brain. We have no science because what they give us limits us, keeps us not understanding. This thing about the material sciences, about the evidence-based, everyone in social media always claims that if you're not giving evidence, you're lying. Well, how about I tell you something and you decide if it's true or not? And that's what you do. You use your intuition, but not everybody does. And of course, we also were taken from our visitors. The angelicals are not going to come in and interrupt or intervene. They just observe. And anybody else, well, if you were driving through Kansas, next to Leavenworth, are you going to stop by to see what they're serving for breakfast? Nobody wants to stop in a prison planet. This is just, what we see are the craft that are ours mostly, or people who are lost. And I call them people because to me, they're all people, so we have been programmed into a mindset of salvation. If we seek physical salvation, we go to the medical system. If we seek intellectual salvation, well, how about academia? God forbid you learn on your own. I'm sure you learned a lot on your own, but that doesn't count. You don't have a title from academia. So if you want societal salvation, we look for a politician. This is a nanny state. The government will fix it for me. If we want spiritual salvation, that's when we go to organized religion. And if it goes wrong, it's God's fault. I mean, he did this to me. Well, quantum physics, there's something called the observer effect. And that shows us that when two people observe the same phenomena at the same time, each one sees it differently. And the reason is because we are creators. We are. If I'm happy today, I'm going to have a happy day. And I literally switch to a timeline that matches me. So what we have to understand is we should not seek for saviors. That's why we got into the trouble we're in. In fact, after we will get rid of the cabal. And after we get rid of them, guess what's going to happen? The doors are going to open up and all these bad guys are going to come in. I mean, think about what people said about Castro in Cuba, that once he left his brother, but they said that once Castro died, they were afraid that they were going to get conquered or run over or controlled by somebody else, another bad guy. Well, if we seek salvation, and we have to really understand this, if we seek salvation, we make ourselves susceptible. If on the other hand, we understand our nature, and this is why it's so important, I didn't want just to tell a story and then get us all angry against the cabal. We had to understand it first, process it, go through the coping stages, anger, why me, sadness, all that stuff. But then once we can package it, we can follow the guidance of Jesus Christ. He was unconditional love, so we can love them, love the cabal. Listen to what I'm saying. Love the cabal for the teaching, for the help they gave us to learn this lesson as humanity. He also served others. We can serve them. We can serve each other. We can serve the planet. And then he forgave us, Jesus Christ, even though we hung him on the cross. We forgive everybody. We forgive them. Once we do that, we don't do it for them. We do it for us. We remove that weight that we carried, and we're free now. So it's very important to me. This is what I wanted to get to. That I understand is spiritual, but there's convergence. Everything comes in together. This is the time when we have to come to learn our reality. That's what you're doing, truth. Come to know our reality so that we can wrap our arms around it, and then we can love and forgive. That's new earth. That's when we're ready. New earth is an energetic state. We don't get there until we match it. Just like timelines, we can only be there when we match it. And it is my goal that humanity, all of humanity, makes it. It doesn't matter if they do it today, tomorrow, whenever they're ready. I love everyone, and I hope to serve everyone. I'm not asking, this is the last thing I'll say on this long soliloquy here. I'm not asking anybody to trust me. I'm asking them to trust themselves, because intuition depends on trusting of the self.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't trust yourself, Charlie, your intuition is nothing.
A lot of people don't, and this is where it's so important right now to reset your moral compass, so that you can learn to trust yourself and trust your intuition.
That's right.
You just made me think there of something that Vladimir Putin often says when people accuse him of executing people. He said, "My job is not to judge you. My job is to send you to a man who will." And it's very interesting that Donald Trump also changed the law so that if anybody was involved in paedophilia,
That's right.
they would automatically get the death penalty, which that in itself is sending them to the man that's going to judge them.
That's right.
Yeah, we learn everything from failure. We learn very little from success. And if we can, when you talk about forgiveness, if we forgave people as much as we'd been forgiven, then we'd be on the right track. I could certainly say that from my perspective, because I've had a checkered past, to put it mildly. But you come through that, and I don't have any regrets. It was part of the journey. I look back at it and realize how valuable those lessons were. It's very, very easy to get eaten up with that was a stupid mistake. It was a stupid mistake. I agree with you. But did I learn anything from it? And if I learned something from it, then it was worthwhile. It might not have been nice at the time for all parties involved, but did I learn from it? And that's the most important part.
Yes. Yes. I tell my daughters that I have failed many more times than anybody else they know.
Mm-hmm. But if you can learn from it, it's so constructive. The thing is with success, you don't actually want to challenge it. You just go with it.
Yeah.
But obviously when you fail, you have to face up to it.
Yeah.
And it's how you face up to failure that will determine you as an individual, and how you face up to mistakes that you've made in your past. Because there's always people out there, I've noticed on this journey, there's always people point the finger and go, well, he did this and he did this and he did this, and a lot of the time they're right. He did do this and he did do that. He did do the other. My past was not perfect by any sense of the imagination. But I've got through to 60 years old with my family and on a tough journey. And I'm very grateful to be alive and to be where I am right now. I'm blessed. But,
that makes you very wealthy.
Well, in a spiritual level.
That's right. Yes, the real wealth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I often ask, in management, I ask people, who would you rather trust with this project? Somebody who has never failed. Their past looks fantastic, but they've never failed. Mm-hmm. Or somebody who has failed along the way. I'll take the person who's failed.
Yeah. It's like in business, isn't it? When you see these businessmen and somebody points out, he's been bankrupt 3 times.
Yeah.
And he's back up working again.
That's right.
He's got a bit of backbone to him, hasn't he?
The trick is not necessarily getting there the first time, but actually standing up, of course.
Interesting enough with bankruptcy, the biggest reason for going out of business for bankruptcy is not because of a lack of orders.
That's right.
To do with cash flow.
Cash flow. Yes, that's right.
And very often that's because of the fact that the banks, which have been so corrupt, have held these businesses to ransom.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of people who are not from the corporate world do not, even executives many times miss the fact that cash flow is what can make you survive to fight for another day or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can have bad profits for a period of time and have float and be able to sustain it.
Yeah.
If you have the cash available. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Really.
I know I went through quickly, but I understand it. I know a lot of this is dry. It's a lot of information, but I wanted people to be able to wrap their arms around it and understand that this is not just a political party. It's not just someone like LeBron James who decides that he's going to fund people in Florida who are felons and so they can vote for Biden. It's a complete system.
Mm-hmm.
We all live within it. We're the fish inside of the fishbowl. We don't realize that things are different outside. And again, that's what you are doing, because you're bringing all these people from the spiritual side, Magenta Pixie, or whatever it is that the people that you're bringing in, and you're trying to collate all that for the audience, and for that we owe you, and I'm very thankful that you do that. I'm thankful that you have me here.
I'm trying to provoke people to think for themselves. That's all I'm trying to do. Don't take my word as gospel. Go out and research for yourself the truth. Right. That's all I ask. And what Albert has done today is laid out, as he put it right at the start of this, laid out a feast of information.
That's right.
Some of it will be for you, some of it won't.
That's right.
But take the bits that are for you, that will benefit you, and learn from them and gain from them. But do you yourself and me a favor. Do your own research. Don't take what Albert said and what Charlie said. Don't take that as gospel. Go and find out. The whole idea of this is to provoke so you can find out the truth, because I'm hearing so many times, well, it doesn't make sense, but you've done no research. And your idea of research is sitting in front of the television. That's not going to help you. It's like sticking your head down the toilet looking for gold. You're not going to find it down there. You need to be looking in the right places.
Yeah.
And then when you find different things, you'll find different aspects. And again, Albert was saying that two people can see the same thing and see it completely differently.
That's right.
And you have to make your own judgment. And you have to use your intuition and trust your intuition to try and establish truth. And that's what we're trying to do. Absolutely.
Well, Charlie, thank you very much.
Well, thank you too, Albert. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. And, it's given us an awful lot to think about, and a lot more angles to look at things and aspects to look at things and try and understand what truth is all about.
Yes, and like you said, not some of the parts may not be for everybody, but
correct.
They may not be today. They may just be seeds today.
Sure. But thank you very, very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Happy sunny afternoon for you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sunny afternoon here, and rather warm today, and I hope the same for you too.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Justin, and I hope you're enjoying my dad's videos. Make sure to share this video with family and friends, like and subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you get notified for all my dad's new videos. My social media will be tagged down below so you can follow it. And just remember, Jesus loves you.